Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be going through which era of aircraft you want for your first purchase in DCS. To break this down, I've decided on 4 categories: World War II, Early Cold War, Mid Cold War, and Late Cold War / Modern. There will be plenty of times where aircraft blur the lines between these categories, but this is the best way I've found to put aircraft into a specific box. Don't get me wrong, I could have used fighter generations, but quite frankly that's just as arbitrary, and anyone who tells you otherwise doesn't really know what they're talking about. Maybe that'd be a good idea for a video in the future, but I don't have time to go into it now. As you've probably already noticed, this video will be a little bit more free-flowed, a little bit more talkative, as I just don't really have the way to make this as neat and tidy as I'd like. So we're just going to sit and talk about what each generation feels like, what they bring to the table, and how they work, I suppose. So now that all that preamble's over, let's start with World War II. You have a variety of aircraft, however they're all, with one exception, single-engine fighters. The exception to the rule being the Mosquito, which after all is just a twin-engine fighter bomber. At least the one that's in DCS anyway. You'll have to take everything I say from here on World War II aircraft with a rather large pinch of salt, as I only own the Spitfire and the TF-51, which is the free aircraft. With that being said, in preparation for this video, I did go and watch plenty of videos and look at plenty of reviews so that I can get a better idea on how to communicate what the entire World War II era is like in DCS. So what are the benefits of a World War II aircraft as your first? Well, firstly, there's no real systems to learn. Yes, you've got the sighting and the gauges, but those are basic, extremely basic, something that can be learned in 10 minutes. The challenges with World War II aircraft start immediately with the takeoff. You have to manage your engine and your rudder, and your trim has to be right. Otherwise, things will go wrong rapidly. Once you're in the air, the challenges persist, and coming down for a landing is just as hard as taking off. So you're probably wondering, why on earth would I pick World War II as my first aircraft? Well, it's really fun. Probably some of the most fun you'll have in the game. It's pure flying and fighting at its best, and no feeling quite compares to that of getting on the tail of a Focke-Wulf for the first time. Like I said at the start of this part, I currently only own the Spitfire, but spending a lot of time flying in preparation for this video, I think I'm going to be picking up more World War II aircraft in the future. Moving on, let's talk about the early Cold War, and when I say that, we're pretty much just talking about Korea here, as there aren't many aircraft in the game from that particular era. And again, I will say I'm not much of an expert, I only own the Flaming Cliffs versions of these aircraft. So what do these Korean War jets bring to the table? Well, they're very similar to the World War II aircraft we just discussed. You've got access to guns, dumb bombs, rockets. You do have access to some very early air-to-air missiles, but they are pretty much useless. Where these early jets differ from the World War II aircraft we spoke about earlier is in the ease of flying. They're far easier to take off, land, and generally fly. You don't have to worry about engine management the way you do in the props. You're also relatively slow and agile, so you can still have a good time dogfighting. Next, we're moving on to the mid-Cold War. This is where aircraft become very individualistic. I won't tell you how many times I tried saying that word. I will just say it was an embarrassing amount. In this era, you have aircraft like the Viggen, the MiG-21, the F-14, the F-4, the Mirage F-1, just to name a few. And in that list of 5, you can already see just how different all of these platforms perform and what they bring to the table is so vastly different. In this era, speed was the name of the game. Maneuverability definitely came second. This means these aircraft can be somewhat of a challenge to fly, especially when you're really pushing the envelope of what they can do. Inside the cockpit, things don't get any easier. This was the period when things were going from analog to computer, and this is the same for jets. This is also the first point where you'll find some of the more advanced weapons like laser guided bombs or TV guided munitions and radar guided missiles. This is also a time before the modern HOTAS, so you will find just hundreds of buttons, and you'll often need to do a sequence of 5 or 6 different buttons just to perform one action within the aircraft. The mid-Cold War is also when we start seeing HUDs. However, these are not like modern HUDs, they're more or less just fancy gun sights most of the time. As much fun as these aircraft can be, I wouldn't recommend them to beginners, as they not only have some of the hardest systems to learn, but also are some of the most difficult to fly. As we move into the late Cold War and modern era, the pilot's job becomes less about flying the aircraft and more about managing the weapon systems. This is the first time you begin to see things like advanced autopilot and fly-by-wire systems. It's also the first time I believe that you'll spend as much time with your head inside of the cockpit as out of it as the pilot. If you're looking at getting a jet from this era, you have available to you the most modern of weapon systems, and your situational awareness is taken to the next level. Targeting pods at this point have jumped from barely being able to tell the difference between a tank and a car to being able to make the difference between an M4 and an AK on a soldier. Almost all of these aircraft are true day or night aircraft. They can fight in any weather at any time, and this is helped a lot by the addition of GPS guided munitions, which means you can launch land attack cruise missile from 100 miles away with no problem and hit the target the size of a window. One of the biggest reasons, stepping outside of the aircraft themselves, why you'd want a late Cold War or modern aircraft, is that's what most of the multiplayer servers are based around. Obviously this doesn't affect you if you only play single player, but if you ever want to step into that multiplayer arena, even if it is just PvE, then these modern aircraft are going to be your best bet. I do think these modern aircraft are a great place to start overall. They are the easiest to fly, but do require in-depth knowledge on how to use all of the systems effectively. So to finish, I will say the same thing that I have on every one of these videos that I've done and will do. The best aircraft to start with is the aircraft that you want to try. These are more guides for people who don't really know aircraft and just want to get into the game of DCS itself. Thank you so much for watching. If this was useful to you, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more like this. I'd really appreciate comments on anything that I've got wrong or any input that you have, really. I'm sure it'd be really helpful for other people to see and understand why people pick their first aircraft.